basically I want to talk more about orbs really quick. Okay, so these are the different schools of thought. Okay, let's split it right down the middle, although there's no real complete split. There's one school of thought, the conservatives will say, okay, and although the conservatives should be on the right, conservatives are on the right, okay, and they're basically the idea that Moira is a healer, Moira should be saving her tanks. If all you do is you spam damage orbs, then there's going to be times when your tanks are critical or you're in risk, and because you just used a damage orb to farm up more coal, you then get punished for it, right? So it's like heal orb primarily during engagements, defends itself, basically just, you know, keep myself alive, keep my tanks alive. If we don't need an orb, then don't use an orb, basically. Their arguments are that heal orb has more resource because it has 300 resource, so you have, and it also spits it out at 75 HPS. It allows your tanks to go in super aggro, and it ultimately fulfills what Moira is quote-unquote supposed to do, which is pocket her tank. So you play a more conservative style, you heal orb, you defend yourself, you more resource, you're tank friendly, okay? And then let's say we're the liberals. And the liberals, okay, the liberals like their damage orbs, right? They like spamming their damage orbs. They like playing loose and free. You're not defending itself, but you're harassing enemies. So you're constantly harassing backline. Now this one is less valuable into comps that are also running Lucio more, because Lucio more can heal up chip damage. But if the enemy team is running Ana Zen or a Hanzo, like constantly having to nade themselves or Harmony Orb your Ana because you take a chip damage, like this is really annoying. Like it's more resource, but you build ult faster. So you have only 200 resource for your ult, for your orb, but you build ult faster because that 200 resource is always used, right? So rather than part of that 300 healing being used, it's always a 200 damage. If you're good at your damage orbs, it will always get used up. So this is coal friendly. And coal friendly basically just means that it's not necessarily friendly to you or anybody, but it does build your ult a lot faster. Now, this is like real politics. Now I'm not a centrist, I'm not going to expose my political leanings, but like real politics, both of these are good. Both of them have points on different aspects of the game and different situations, okay? First off, harassing backline is a legitimate threat. However, if there's not a backline to harass, defending yourself is something important too. If the enemy team is running Doomfist, if they're running Dive, if they're running some sort of spam, and you're likely to take damage, being able to defend yourself is very important, right? However, building your ult is also really valuable. Building the first to coal every single fight is something that you should be aiming for, especially because that ult in the current meta is really strong with the double shield and stacked up people. However, during brawls, when stuff is actually happening, fights are actually happening, and you can get a good bounce, you are 100% going to get more value out of a heal orb. Not only does it allow your team to defend themselves significantly better, but you'd rather have the 100 extra healing, right? Thanks. And keeping your tanks up, that's significantly more important than building like 5% more ult charge in the middle of a fight. However, if you can consistently get value out of every single damage orb you use, you are going to build coal faster, and ultimately that's not just tank friendly, this is team friendly, right? Because if you're getting an ult every single fight, that's like huge for Moira. So the question is when do you spam damage orbs? When do you use heal orbs? And let's actually look at this. Ask yourself a question. Is your team, do we engage? Do we engage? Or does enemy engage? So in other words, look at the compositions and read that basically, are we looking to rush on top of them? Or is the enemy team looking, excuse me, or is the enemy team looking to rush on top of us? Okay? And this like the VOD that we just saw with the Rhine Zarya, what was the answer to this in question? What was the answer to this question? And we just saw the VOD that we just saw with the Rhine Zarya versus the Orisa Sigma. What was the answer to this question? Do we engage or does the enemy engage? Yes or no to either of these? Yes, we engage, right? So then we did engage, right? So that makes heal orb more attractive, right? Now, what if the enemy team is running Dive and we're running the Orisa Sigma? Okay? Like we're running the Orisa Bunker and they're running Dive. What's the answer then? Does the enemy engage? Yes. So the question is, if the enemy is running dive and your team is running like a Ryan Zarya comp, does that make Heal Orb more attractive? And the answer is yes, which means that we're going to orb in yellow, right? Does that make sense? Because one of us is playing faster tempo, that makes heal orbs more attractive because either our team is going to need that big burst of healing when we go in, or we're going to need the big burst of healing to survive the rush that the enemy team is going on, right? So whenever there's a threat of one team engaging or the other, heal orb becomes more attractive because it's the more defensive playstyle. It gives out the more resource. You don't see the yellow, whatever. It's up here. Okay? So then the question is, if yes, all right, if yes, when? Estimate. Okay? So the question then becomes, when do you estimate this engagement happening? When do you estimate this engagement happening? Right? Is it going to happen in 5 seconds? Is it going to happen in 2? Sorry, I couldn't. Is it going to happen in 10? Right? Because if it's happening in a couple seconds, then what do? You hold, right? You hold your orb because you're anticipating an actual fast engagement where you'd want to use your heal orb coming up, right? However, if it's going to be more, like it's going to be 7 or 8 seconds, maybe longer, that's when you throw the damage orb, because then you're maximizing your ult charge during a poke stage. And you have to understand that even Brawl or Dive comps do have poke stages, right? Like, let's say the enemy team is running a bunker comp and you're running Genji, Moira, Tracer, or something like that. Your Genji is going to take time to stage, your Winston's going to flank, your Tracer's going to flank, and that's not just, you're not actually poking as a team, but you could be throwing damage orbs, waiting for the initiation. And then when the initiation happens, you heal orb in and go in, right? So if you don't anticipate an engage from the enemy team soon or your team soon, that's when you damage orb. Venator D Draken, thank you for the follow. That's when you damage orb to build your ult faster, right? If not, you just throw damage orb. Are we so far so good? Everybody understand this so far? Double shield's good now because of Sigma, because Sigma can poke. Ryan was useless until the enemy team ran on top of him, so you could poke him out. Sigma can poke. Okay, so the question is, do we engage or does the enemy engage? If yes, then heal orb during those engages is attractive. If it's not, if their engagement is, even if they do engage, if the engagement is several seconds away, a long time away, then spam your damage orbs to build your ult faster. Okay? Now the question is, now we revisit this. What if the answer to this question is no? What if you're both running Orisa Sigma with snipers or with a Doomfist Hanzo or something like that, where yes, there's an engage, but there's no real engage, brawl, or dive, but some team might push up aggressively and one team might not. Maybe there's ultimates on the table. So then you have to go. You have to understand that the term brawl, okay? Brawl does not necessarily mean people swinging on top of each other. Brawl means committed to the fight. Committed to the fight, okay? So that means the Orisa has used Fortify, people are halting each other, Doomfists are punching in, Hanzo's, you've broken your first shield, Sigma's used a couple of cooldowns, there's maybe ults going on, yada yada yada. And that instance, heal orb is a little bit more valuable because there is more chance of you taking damage or your team taking significant damage in those instances, okay? So in other words, even with comps with double shields that are kind of poking at each other a little bit, once the trades start to get heavy and people start to get closer to each other, Doomfists are punching in, Reapers on the backline, Hanzo's stormbowing your shield, heal orb, obviously, reactively, is more attractive. But here's the thing. Did you notice that I said reactive? you can reactively, as long as you've got quick reflexes, you can reactively heal orb most circumstances when you're playing with Orisa. And this is because she can shield dance and has fortify. You can't do that with Rhine because he takes bursts of damage and he has to be on top of the enemy team to do anything, which means he is committed. There is no backing out. There's no stabilize. I keep getting tea things in my throat. So with double shield, heal orbing when you've committed to a brawl reactively is fine. And until you've seen heavy trades and cooldowns used, you can continue to spam damage. Can you be more damage heavy in a brawl, though, to exert pressure against squishies and divert attention and get picks? Yeah, if there are squishies. That's the problem, though. That's the problem. The problem with damage orbing is, okay, you annoyed the Moira, you did like 20, 30, 40, 50, damage to her, and you did like 30, 40 damage to her entire team, but that 30, 40 damage is the problem with damage orb is it does damage to a lot of targets, okay? Right? So you might do damage, like you might even do hit, if you're the one playing into a brawl, maybe your damage orb hits 5 different targets, okay? And it does 40 damage to each of those targets. The problem with that is theoretically you're like, okay, that's really healable by Lucio or Moira Puff, but when combined with the rest of my team's damage, it'll be enough to finish kills. But the problem is, listen to me, the problem is damage orb is indiscriminate. Damage orb will damage everybody equally. And if your team calls to focus Orisa, your damage orb is not going to suck on center on the Orisa. It will bypass the Orisa like everybody else, do a little bit of 40 damage, and then fade away. Right? So the problem with damage orbing during brawls, even if you guys are focusing down a target or even targets, is some of that damage is wasted, right? Because let's say you're focusing these 2 targets, right? Yes, you did 80 damage to those targets, but this damage is almost completely useless because these targets are going to get healed up by their own Moira spray and Lucio aura with no focus of their own team. So it's not even like, oh, we're going to stop healing these targets and focus on these targets. No. The Lucio's going to be in heal song as it is, so this 40 damage is going to get healed up almost for free without the Lucio even trying and without the Moira even trying. Right? So you're in reality only getting 80 damage value out of your damage orb, which in some circumstances is enough. Like if you're damage orbing like if your team is running dive and you damage orb their Zen, 40 damage is a lot. Winston landing damage, Genji dash, Tracer blinks in 1 clips, like that 40 damage is a long way. But in most brawl comps, 40 damage is not very much. 80 damage of resources is not a lot. Whereas with heal orb, if you're heal orbing on initiation, you can control who it's healing most of the time. You will reactively heal. And the thing with heal orb is it will stay longer on people that need it, right? So you initiate with your tanks, right? And you heal orb your Orisa or your Reinhardt, your Zarya during critical. Like you're going to get, not only does the orb hold 300 resource, but the people outside here, right, that maybe are diving in, and your main tank and you and your off tank who are initiating, these are the targets that you want to heal, right? Yourself and your tanks. And if you heal orb during these initiations, these are the people that you're going to be supporting too. So it's not wasted on people out here taking chip damage, right? You're going to focus it on the targets that you want. So yeah, you might only get, 180 healing out of that, but 180 is a lot more than 80. And it's on the targets that you want to heal. So the thought process is that heal orbing is generally most efficient for clean engages. You guys hear me? Listen to my words again. Heal orb is generally better to either deny enemy engages or to facilitate your clean engages. You guys see that? If the enemy team is diving you, you're diving them, you're running on top of each other, your team is running on top of each other, generally heal orb is better. Okay? Now, everybody stop and tell me why I emphasized clean engages. Why did I emphasize it? theoretically heal orb generates ult faster. Theoretically, if all of it's used, which most of the time it's not. So why did I emphasize clean engages? Think about the last time you played Moira in comp. Did you have any clean engages? Did you guys communicate and orchestrate a dive? Did you guys call? How many times did you guys call an all-in on their team? Okay. So do you see the problem here? Is how many times have you in a comp game, or how often, or how consistently, or what percentage of fights do you actually have fights where you guys have a decisive engage? Like we just watched a VOD with the Ryan Zarya, right? And the Ryan stands there and shields, stands there and shields, stands there and shields, then charges in. Whereas our Moira is equally at fault because our Moira stands there, puffs, no heal orb, no heal orb, no heal orb. Ryan actually goes in, swings, our Moira still doesn't heal orb, Ryan dies, and then she heal orbs after the Ryan's already dead. It's too late, right? So it's both are at fault. It's not just the Ryan's fault. So when there's like the problem is just not is coordination. It's really just coordination. All of these are just coordination. Coordination isn't in as much of comp. So then the question becomes, if heal orb is maximized in value when your team is coordinated, then generally, what type of playstyle do I support in comp? Or not playstyle, excuse me. What type of orb usage do I usually endorse in comp? You farm damage orbs. The idea is that heal orb has more resource, it heals the targets that you want to, and it allows you to take brawls or dives with a lot more support. But the problem is it also requires coordination to find the most value out of heal orbs. Otherwise, you just throw an orb out, bounces away, and then your team goes in. Or your team goes in and then you heal orb, but it's too late, right? Whereas damage orb, you know it's going to get value every single time. It might not lead to kills, but you know it'll give you 7% ult charge every single time. But the problem is with heal orbing is that, like I said, it's not always going to be as much value because you're not always going to be coordinated with your team. So I generally endorse damage orb spam as much as possible. The only time that you should generally heal orb in comp is one, if you're playing with an active tank, and this is especially a red flag, like you definitely need to be looking at this if you're running a Ryan Zarya. Especially important because generally these are the tanks that have to be active to find value. So be like, that doesn't mean you just throw, but like if you're playing a game and your Ryan Zarya literally never walks forward, then obviously revert back to just spamming damage orbs. But keep an eye at when you're running an active tank. When you need healing, significant healing. Okay, not just like, oh, I'm 180 health, I'm gonna heal over myself. Or someone is critical in Brawl. So if the fight has started and one of your tanks is critical, like the fight has started, not teams are shooting at each other from distance, but the fight has started, heal orbing in a Brawl is fine. And there's nothing wrong if you anticipate, like if there's nothing wrong, like you with holding up, like you could, and by the way, I'm not saying that you should always be spamming damage orbs. If you think that the enemy team is like running a dive comp and they keep diving your backline, and then save your heal orb for when they engage. Keep that, at least, even if you didn't understand the whole of it, because yes, we did go pretty in detail, at least some of that should be in the back of your mind. Some of that should be in the back of your mind. Because that's the criteria, or like the standard that I hold good Moira orbs up to. At least in comp. Okay?